The rain started easy tonight, small taps against the glass, like someone testing if they were welcome. I left the lights low. The desk lamp hummed faintly, its filament breathing in a rhythm that felt almost alive. Old wires stretched across the floor, tangled like veins, and when I brushed them with my foot, they whispered faintly. I told myself I should replace them. I never do. The room feels truer with its flaws intact. It isn't really silence here, never is. Rain, the hum, the faint settling of the walls. That's the texture of night. My night. I switch on the old recorder and watch the reel spin. I like the way the wheels turn, even when nothing is being said, like waiting lungs. There's a kind of comfort in knowing that magnetic tape will never forget, no matter what I say. Or what someone else says. Some of you probably think this is paranoia or curiosity. It's both. Memory alone lies. Playback does not, unless playback itself has been touched. I keep telling myself that as the reels click forward, steady as a Heart.MK Ultra, the name itself is a ghost, dragged out for documentaries and dismissed as a relic. When first asked, most officials laughed. Conspiracy, they'd say. Fringe theories. But laughter is effective. It turns fear into embarrassment, cuts investigation short. Who wants to be the fool repeating a myth? Yet myths don't stalk archives. Myths don't leave signed test forms, receipts tied to agencies that deny ownership. And myths don't dissolve a man from his family, day by day. Until one evening he simply isn't home and never is again. My father vanished like that. Not in one sharp cut, but in stutters. Little absences. Missed dinners. A vacant look when I asked about his work. Tired laughter that cost him too much breath. What remained after he was gone were fragments. Boxes of papers. One single tape buried between receipts. A reel no one but me was supposed to hear. And even as I place it on the spindle now, I wonder if I should. The rain thickens against the glass as I slide the wheel into place. Hands shaking slightly, though I keep them out of frame. The tape head touches down with a small click. A sound as harmless as a pen against paper, but my chest clenches like I've cracked a locked door. The reel stirs, already whispering before my father's voice comes. White noise, steady, hiding in it a rhythm just outside words. Then a cough. His cough. I know it better than his laugh. And then him, flat but certain, saying a date. October 17th, 1975. That was months before the record said he vanished. He speaks again, short phrases. Most are buried in static, but one pushes through. If anyone hears, not ours, not ours. His voice cuts as the static surges high, like wind across wires. I pause the reel, breath shallow. My hand drifts to the desk mic. The rain is louder now, like the storm has leaned closer to here with me. I rewind, play again. The words distort, and yet they break through. Not ours. He repeats them. The static grows harsher with each repeat, like the recording rejects clarity. The frequency meter along the board twitches. It shouldn't. Inputs closed, gain steady. Yet the needle lifts, trembles, and then falls. I watch it as if my father is pressing it from the other side of the glass. No, not him. Something else inside the reel, reaching through the seam of his voice. I tell myself, magnetic tape can carry bleed. Overlapping recordings. Accidental imprints. It's technical, not metaphysical. That's the way to soothe the rising panic sweating into my palms. Yet when I close my eyes, I hear his words not as memory, but as present. He is speaking now live, submerged in a line no one should have tuned. Would you believe a voice that comes only through static? I wonder if it's worse when it's someone you loved, because the heart wants it real, while the mind knows intrusion wears familiar masks. Either way, it brands you. My chest drums with each syllable, even when gone. Rain pounds harder. dragging its own rhythm across the building skin. I lean close to the mic. My throat is tight, but I whisper. Maybe to myself. Maybe to whoever broke into that reel. Urban legend, conspiracy, dismissed. Yet somehow his voice is here, dated before his disappearance, cut loose from official time. If this wasn't memory, if this was insertion, what am I holding? Evidence or another experiment? Outside, thunder growls, low and steady, too far to break, but close enough to warn. I press play again, forcing myself to ride with the noise. Each second stretches. Then, faintly, beneath his cough, beneath the static, there blooms another sound. Higher, purer. Not quite a whistle, not quite a note. A frequency I can feel between my teeth, nesting there, vibrating the fillings. It layers with the rain until the room itself seems tuned, drawn taut. The reel clicks. My father's final line breaks through half static, half voice. He says, if you hear. The rest never surfaces. All I have is rain outside, tape inside, and a hollow frequency tremor rattling every silence in between. What was left behind? Or what was planted? I can't tell. The night waits, rain hammering, but no answer comes. Nor do I expect one. This is only the first cut. The local archive is a basement of dust and paper rot, fluorescent lights buzzing with a faint nerve-like flicker. I walk in already rehearsing a reason for being there, though no one asks. The clerk recognizes the request without comment. Boxes are rolled onto a cart, metal wheels squealing in echoes. My hands shake slightly as I lift the file folders. Each page smells like basement air, ink leached into paper fibers over decades, like ghosts left skin deep. I settle into a corner desk, the rain from last night still in my ears. Though down here no windows exist, the first file is a form stamped with bold red lines. Entire sentences choked out by black bars, thick as tar. Each erasure feels less like removal and more like suffocation. The few surviving words hang lonely between voids. Phrases about subject thresholds and restricted consent. I run my finger across the line of a missing name. The ink looks raised as if it scorched the paper on its way out. The clerk told me these were scanned from microfilm, but my fingertips disagree. It feels like the margins carry burned scars. Reading aloud is habit now, so I let the words roll. My recorder sits quietly on the desk, reels gliding steady. I say aloud, field notes, 1973, auditory response tests. The last two words break. Not my throat, not my fluency. The tape playback hums low, like a buried tone discovered by accident. My first instinct is a malfunction, but when I go silent, the tone vanishes. Only when the words leave my mouth does something else arrive to meet them. I lower my voice and try again. Sub-project code 704. The hum returns, imperceptible to me until I play it back. On playback, the tone is unmistakable, like a faraway generator buried under concrete. I listen twice, 3 times. My breath comes faster. There's no way to deny it. The words trigger sound. The gaps seem engineered to make way for it. Each redaction isn't absence. Each one is alive. Deeper into the folders, I find fragments scrawled in pen along margins. Notations in handwriting I know. My father's. He draws arrows between pages, linking agency reports to Minky ULTR, a sub-projects, cross-referencing numbers that mean little until repeated across files. I follow this breadcrumb trail through cryptic diagrams and abbreviations. When I reach a half-legible page labeled Audio Patterns, Induction Curves, I see his name again, smaller this time. Squeezed into a corner as though he wasn't supposed to write it at all. I whisper the words as I read them, afraid not to. Voices blanked. Subjects disoriented. The hum swells again. Louder this time, pressing against eardrum and floor both, visible even in the small twitch of the needle on my levels gauge. If silence can be overwritten, then the silence on these pages isn't natural. It's active, like wallpaper painted over to hide something still wet beneath. Flipping forward, signatures float near the end of reports. The names look governmental, but typed letters shift strangely on the page. As I sound them out, they almost dissolve like learning names of people who never lived. Oddly, my lips feel numbed, forming syllables, as if my body objects. I force them anyway, capturing them on magnetic tape. Playback later reveals emptiness. My recorder excises sound the instant I try to push through those letters. It's not silence, it's erasure. A living, deliberate act. Each page grows harder to face. My father's handwriting appears with irregular rhythm, as if done quickly under watch. Directions, cross-ref 12b. Listen for bleed under floor. The desperation leaks through small loops of his pen. I feel him leaning across decades, trying to be heard through bureaucratic tar. His notes are fading, yet the pencil marks scrape louder in my mind than printed forms ever could. My throat burns as I speak another section. Consent obtained indirectly under pressure of. The black bar cut the rest. The hum swells so violently the tape reels tremble, jittering like something pressed its hand against them from inside. My knees scrape against the desk, heart thrashing. The light overhead flickers in time. I don't dare stop reading, but I modulate to a whisper. Even whispered, the hum follows, obedient, voracious. Something in me tilts toward panic. If words can be silenced halfway, can voices be peeled straight from living throats? I imagine a man mid-sentence, speaking protest, only for sound itself to seize his tongue and smother him into stillness. The black bars hide text. What if they also hide vanished people, sealed out of existence by the same mechanism? The possibility clings, heavier than any official truth. I try logging page numbers, but the pencil breaks mid-stroke. The clerk passes by and glances over with barely any reaction, as if carrying awareness she won't voice. I wonder if she knows what these archives breathe. I tuck the broken pencil in pocket, as proof even objects resist inscription here. When I finish the carton, edges feathered like the paper had brushed flame, I pack the folders back with careful hands. The rain may be outside, but sweat weights my palms as though storms press under my skin. I shut off the recorder, then hesitate. I rewind, press play. The playback is there, the tone raw and undeniable. Not my imagination. Not nerves. It roars faintly each time my father's notes surface, vanishing when I try to ignore it. I sit in the flicker, listening too long. The sound gnaws through air. Each black bar has teeth that still chew. Every erasure gnaws at memory. In that basement, surrounded by ghosts of letters, I realize disappearance was never personal. It was institutional. And if pages can be silenced as they are spoken, people can be vanished the same way. I sit still, holding my breath, waiting to hear what isn't supposed to be heard. The recorder reels turn in steady rhythm, the red light sharp against the dark. I replay the session from the archive basement. At first the sound is only faint, a low vibration brushing across the floorboards. Not in words, not in music. A hum too steady to be random. It waits, then grows thicker when I leave space between my sentences. Silence doesn't feel empty anymore. It feels occupied. I lean closer to the speaker. The hum swells, blooming with density, and nestled inside it, I hear faint knocks. Rhythmic, like someone tapping through walls I cannot see. 3 knocks, pause, 2 more. I test myself, speaking again, watching how voice cuts the tone off. As soon as I stop, the hum reclaims the track. Playback confirms it every time. Sound leaves, something else arrives, eager, filling space that wasn't offered. Room tone, I remind myself, has always been simple. You measure the nothing of a place, so edits can be smoothed later. Silence with fingerprints. But this is not room tone. This is intrusion. a presence colonizing gaps as if a body pressed its weight onto dead air. My hands sweat on the controls, though the room itself is cool. I replay one section over and over, my voice counting 1, 2, 3. When my count ends, the knocking rises in perfect synchrony. Closer with each loop, I need a second voice. Someone who knows sound the way engineers know blood pressure, ordinary readings, and fatal spikes alike. I dial a number I've nearly forgotten. Old contact. We worked together once when I needed wiring fixed. He picks up with a voice like gravel. I explain, part hesitant, part desperate, that I've caught interference that feels intentional. He sighs, says I'm chasing phantoms, but agrees to hear the recording. We meet in his workshop. Coils of cable loop across the floor, dust sticking to magnets on the benches. I play him the reel through portable speakers. He sits with his arms folded, expression flat. After a few minutes, he chuckles under his breath, calling the knocks bleed through, the hum simple interference. He says old tape invites noise like old pipes invite rust. He urges me to drop it before I lose my nights to superstition, but then his eyes flick sideways at the levels display. His fingers twitch against his leg. I press him. He shrugs, dodges, but slips. Says the word anomalies, the way someone says it after years of training not to. Spectrum anomalies, he corrects himself, confidential until very recently. My chest tightens at the word. Anomalies means records. It means measured deviations in controlled environments. Experiments. I ask again, leaning too close. He pulls away, says not to drag him deeper. The work he saw was compartmentalized, fragments only. He makes me promise not to mention his name if I keep talking about this. Still, he repeats his warning. Ghosts aren't meant to be chased. The hum answers him by rising in the floor vents, faint but certain, as if reminding us both who own silence here. He hears it too. His eyes prove it, though he denies it. I leave with the portable deck tucked close to my chest, palms clammy. I can't shake the word he gave me. Anomalies. It rattles hard in my thoughts. If sound could be bent this way, used to nudge or erase, then every pause in speech held risk. Every silence, a waiting instrument. And how many silences had my father been forced into before the final permanent one? Back in my room, I lower the lights. I place the mic in the corner, let it run with no voice at all. For 10 minutes the reels spin. When I play it back, the hum is there, thicker than before. The knocks have multiplied, irregular this time, pressing close as though a hand or a fist is feeling around for a crack in the air. Each thud sets the table trembling. I whisper aloud, "Are you listening back?" My voice swallows the noise as expected, but when I fall silent, the response comes faster. The hum rushes into the vacuum, heavier, layered. I picture a great weight pressing on water, filling in whatever I displace. The room feels weighted, almost as if I am occupying someone else's silence, trespassing in an already owned stillness. I clench my jaw, replaying the tape again and again. My chest aches as if held between pulse and gravity. Anomalies, tests, collapsed lives. How many names like his, erased mid-sentence, their final words dissolved into room tone. The silence doesn't comfort anymore. It ill fits the air, like it was built not for me but for them. I shut my eyes, wishing it gone. But silence no longer belongs to me. The hall smells of solder and coffee gone stale. Folding tables line the walls, cluttered with receivers and battered antenna kits. Old men joke about propagation like farmers gauging rain. Static pours from little speakers in messy chorus. The air hums with overlapping fragments of half-languages, clipped Morse bursts, distorted music from some distant station skipping across ionosphere. I walk slow, my recorder heavy against my shoulder, reels waiting to swallow whatever slips loose in the cracks. Outside, the weather hasn't let up. Rain strikes the roof in hard strokes, finding weak joints and dripping into buckets. It folds into the soundscape until you can't tell whether the hiss comes from static or storm. My clothes cling damp at the neck. I find a spot on the floor between tables and unfold a battered portable antenna. A few hobbyists nod, thinking I am one of them. I don't correct them. Their chatter covers my own heartbeat. I tune the receiver slowly upward, sliding past chatter, bursts of Spanish, a hymn warped in flutter echoes. Then it happens. One channel bleeds cleaner than the rest, a tone rubbing against earbones sharper than others. At first, I think it's just gain turned too high. Then words form. A clipped voice. Not conversational, not broadcast. Vocabulary clinical, measured. Observed dilation. Subject unresponsive. Repeat measurement. My chest stiffens. Medical jargon threaded into a place that shouldn't be carrying it. I scribble timecode across my notebook. My hand shakes, but I pin each digit hard. Coordinates of the hall, precise dial reading, date and hour to the minute. Every detail a nail. I push the mic closer. The clipped voice stops mid-term, jagged as if cut by blade, replaced by tones. Long synthetic bleeps, flat and emotionless, cycling through in perfect rhythm. The men around me keep talking, oblivious. Some laugh at a coil dropping to the floor. None flinch. None even tilt their head. I look back around the room. No eyes meet mine. No one reacts to the voice or tones. To them the air holds only harmless static. My recorder, however, shows the spiking needle, proof of intrusion. My pulse is louder than the rain, louder than anything, but I stay still, because the weight of being alone in recognition presses harder than any evidence I've held. When I replay the section later that night, digital copies strip it bare. On the computer, the track is hollow, filled with nothing but the wet flap of rain from outside. No clipped words. No synthetic tones. Clean erasure by the time bits touch hard drive. Panic keeps me awake for hours. That proof can dissolve, makes it worse than if I'd misheard. Only the analog cassette remains faithful. Magnetic tape holding traces like a secret cut into skin. I press my ear close to the playback, listening to the faint decay of voice. Fragments are ragged but alive, resisting deletion. My mouth dries as the clinical phrase twists through my body. Something about the fragility, how easily it could have been lost, makes my fists clench on the desk. I try again, different cables, different headphones, but result repeats. Digital workstations return empty bands, as if reality behind those coordinates is forbidden on bitstream. Proof isn't stable. I whisper hoarse at 2 in the morning. What exists depends not just on what's found, but on how it is captured. Tape retains what drives would discard. Even proof negotiates its own survival. I lean back, dizzy with exhaustion. The ceiling groans with old timber. My breath fogs slightly. Maybe the heater has cut again, maybe not. I don't feel warm anyway. The thought circles endlessly. What if disappearance depends on recording medium? If lives could be documented only on fragile reels, erased when transcribed into modern formats, then how many others never got passed along? My father's notes, my father's voice, they linger because I cling to obsolete machines. Maybe that's the only reason they still speak at all. Rain hammers the window as though rhythm syncs with tape. I can't decide if it comforts or taunts. I rewind and play the cassette again, fingers trembling to thread the path smoothly, desperate not to snap fragile ribbon. The hum, the clipped words, and those blinking tones return in faint form, like someone breathing through gauze. The old machine whirs, struggling, but it clings to them. I cling with it. The instability terrifies me more than the voice itself. If proof slips away on translation, then nothing can be trusted unless you catch it with your own hands, in the exact moment, on the exact medium. Evidence lives and dies depending on material. And what I heard today, what I alone seemed to hear, only lives, now inside a cheap cassette. The hall full of chatter exists only as background. The voice that came through belonged nowhere, ruined no one else's evening. Only mine. Alone again, replaying ghosts, etched in tape while the storm outside presses every drop against the walls. I realize the fear is not that the voice intruded. The fear is that it could so easily have been erased, leaving me with nothing but the rain. The envelope arrives thin. Just a slip of manila stamped with the weightless word, responsive. That is the word they use when they pretend generosity. Here is what you asked for, nothing more, nothing less. I slid it open at the kitchen table, the hum of the refrigerator my only witness. Inside, photocopies smeared at the edges, clipped text, missing paragraphs. Still, the fragments are unsettling in their precision. Test subjects marked not as patients, but as dependents. The word repeats again and again, military dependents. Numbers attached to files, scrambled identifiers. Ages scratched out, gender obscured beneath thick strokes. Nothing lines up except the category. Dependents of service members, marked for something that looks nothing like treatment. My hands linger too long on that word, dependents. I think of my father, stationed at edge postings, only home at intervals long enough to leave us unsure which of us counted as shadow to the other dot. His medical history appears in one folder, stretches across years like thin bone. Routine checkups, vaccination records, dental. But then entire months go missing around 1973. Suddenly he reappears, listed fit for new assignment. Though between one page and the next his weight changes, blood pressure changes, handwriting on the signature line is not his own. The paper never admits error. It only moves forward as if we won't notice the seam dot each sheet whispers. Never shouts. On their own they're nothing more than clerical quirks. Together, stacked in sequence, they speak a different system, one that shifts truth by omission. Bureaucratic silence, as engineered as static. My father folded into a category that does not belong to him, pages treating his body as if it required no continuity. I set the recorder beside me. The ritual helps. I need to hear the words aloud, capture them in moving air, so I know they're not inventions. My voice starts steady. Subject, military dependent. Height noted as 6 feet even. Weight, 175. I flip a page. Medical intervention unspecified. Consent not documented. My eyes scratch across the copied ink and my voice dulls in rhythm. The microphone level bounces in sync, then spikes without warning. The needle jerks to the far edge, surging like I'd screamed, though my tone barely shifts. My breath stalls, but I keep reading. A second later, the needle drops flat. Deadline, no sound at all. I tap the mic. Nothing. I shout. Nothing. For 10 seconds, the recorder smothers me entirely. My voice cut out clean. When it returns, it does so mid-syllable, as if I had never paused. Confusion chills me through. My throat is sore from trying to push sound into vacuum. I stop, staring at the reels, the red light blinking calm as if nothing happened. 10 seconds of absence captured. I rewind to confirm. Playback begins innocent, my voice cracking across the bureaucratic jargon. Then, where the cutout occurs, instead of silence, another voice enters. Female, monotone, stripped of any accent I know. Words repeating in thin rhythm. Not theory. Not theory. Not theory. Each repetition grows faint, then sharp, then fades again. 10 seconds stretched by someone else's insistence etched into my track. I replay it 3 times. The phrase is never different, always clipped the same, always pressed into the gaps where my voice should be. Proof doesn't arrive as clarity. It arrives as intrusion, crossing into the machinery where I should be sole occupant. My pulse burns. My hand trembles holding the pencil, scribbling notes that keep slipping off the lines. I whisper the phrase to myself. Not theory. It reverberates in bone, like the very system rose out of paper and stole 10 seconds away just to contaminate them with denial. The oddity isn't that she said it once. It's that she felt the need to stamp the denial over empty place. No name, no detail, only insistence. The fragments stare back from the table. Black bars sealing names, references to interventions that never describe what was done, only what was removed. Pages stacked like bricks in a wall, hiding something deep inside. My father's signature stitched in halfway, absent later, but the system doesn't pause to explain. Dependents turn subjects. Missing months. Nudges and cuts where voices should be. I wonder if the intrusion is warning or mockery. Proof that they can still lift my voice out mid-breath and replace it with theirs. I tell myself, this is evidence. But my hands shake because I know evidence usually clarifies. This corrodes. I close the recorder, but I already know I will open it again tonight. Whatever says, not theory, isn't finished. And the silence around the pages hasn't had its last word. His house is small, leaning against the hillside like it wants to slide into the earth. The porch light flickers with a sick yellow tint. I stand there longer than I should before knocking, hearing the faint buzz of wires overhead. The memory of rain still dripping in gutters though the storm has passed. When the door opens, the retired radio man looks older than I remember. His shoulders sag inward, his skin paper-colored, but his eyes hold the hard focus of someone used to listening deeper than his own breath. He lets me in without a word. The basement is a museum of wires and dust. Receivers line shelves like patient relics, knobs worn smooth, dials cracked, yet still holding power. The air smells of warm metal and damp concrete. Cobwebs thread between antenna rods that never saw daylight. He motions toward an old folding chair. I sit, tucking my recorder against my lap. He insists I keep it unofficial. No names, no records. Our conversation, he says, never enters paper trails. He talks slow, pacing between stacked radios, fingertips brushing dials as if memory lives in their grooves. He tells me it was never just about capturing stray signals. They were seated, introduced deliberately into rooms set up like laboratories, walls lined with absorbing tiles. Subjects sat blindfolded while tones filled the air in calculated steps. Sleeps shaped by rhythm. Dreams bent in slow arcs until volunteers swore their own lives had been rearranged. He pauses there, throat working over something unsaid. Then he admits he walked away near the end. Final contracts asked for sequences no one would name, intended outcomes they avoided putting into writing. What he saw was enough. Volunteers seizing in chairs, blood on lip corners. Others waking with blank stares as if someone had scooped their memories out. He says men in pressed uniforms watched without blinking. Clipboards waiting for results like numbers would excuse broken minds. The radio man's hand shakes as he adjusts a receiver beside him, as if unconsciously pulling the thread of his story tighter by touch. His voice softens into near whisper when he tells me he refused those last jobs. Something about conscience, yes, but also survival. He swore he felt eyes on him whenever orders arrived. Withdraw quietly, disappear into retirement, never speak aloud. He says it saved him. Until now. As his words trail, one of the radios crackles with a faint bleed. A sound too clean to ignore. His shoulders freeze. My mouth dries. A hum swells from nowhere, building steady into a sustained tone sharp enough to lance through teeth. I reach for my recorder, but my hand shakes uncontrollably. The air hardens as though pressure rises in the basement itself. We both turn our eyes upward. The ceiling bulb vibrates in its socket, trembling so violently it hums in sympathy with the tone. Dust rains down around us. Then the glass shatters, showering brittle shards across the table, plunging half the room into shadow. For a moment his face glows only from the faint receiver light, eyes hollow, mouth set in something between fear and recognition. I stumble back, dropping my recorder. It hits the ground, reels still spinning. The sound doesn't cut. Playback will reveal later that the recorder never stopped, even when my fingers lost their grip. That red eye blinked calmly down there in the dark. The tone hangs in the room longer than I want to believe possible. When it finally collapses into silence, the basement feels robbed of air. The radio man steadies himself against the desk, voice breaking through cracked lips. His warning is abrupt, forced out like confession. Once you search, it tunes you back. The words echo sharper in the concrete cellar than anything the electronics had produced. For a second, I don't know if he meant me, or meant the house, or meant the system itself. His gaze fixes past me, as though the wall carries deeper weight than flesh ever did. I scoop up my recorder, hands bleeding from a shallow cut where glass found me. I don't speak again, and neither does he. I climb the stairs without looking back. His voice follows anyway, repeating the phrase under his breath, carried upward with me like the hum had chosen my body as speaker. By the time I step into night air, I can still hear him, though basement doors have long shut. The hillside leans darker now, the sky full of static clouds. I walk away fast, but the hum refuses distance. It nestles under my ribs, faint but certain, like a signal that has already found where to return. The documents arrive in bundles, clipped together with rusted fasteners that bite the paper. More fragments, more black bands across lines, yet occasional slips where the intent shows naked through. Target induction, repetitive auditory exposure, post-session amnesia. They read like ritual instructions. The tone sequences are plotted on graph paper, waves rising and falling with exact intervals, numbers coded along the curve. Sleep sculpted in increments. One series labeled simply dream replacement, another tagged memory interruption. My eyes ache from the tight print, yet I keep reading, pulled forward by the faint hum I've started to expect in every pause. I circle words, underline phrases, inserted narrative elements, controlled exposure windows. The implication is sharp. Dreams as laboratory terrain, tested, revised, emptied. Whole walls of inner life open for intrusion. My father's blank stretches of time come back to me, the way he sometimes woke without knowing where days had gone, staring across the kitchen table as if expecting someone else to be there. The papers confirm what he never said. Dreams weren't protected. They were the frontline dot I decide to test. I set the recorder on my desk just before midnight, reels clean, tape new. I adjust the gain and leave the mic aimed toward the bed. No radio tuned, no antenna raised. Just background night. I tell myself this will be control. I will sleep, and in the morning I will hear nothing more than creaks of the house, the occasional groan of pipes. This thought steadies me just enough to lie still. Sleep arrives heavy but strange. I fall quickly, yet I do not dream. Hours seem to pass without shape. No colors, no voices, no stories weaving in my head. Only blank drift, softer than usual, like being carried without choice. When eyes open again, dawn sits pale outside the blinds. My body aches without reason. I rewind the reel. The first minutes are quiet enough room breathing, the slow rise of my breathing layered. Then something begins. A tone. Steady, unwavering, threaded so smoothly it could almost be mistaken for tinnitus. But this holds perfect pitch, continuing hour after hour. My skin crawls as I watch the counter rotate. Longer than 3 hours, the tone remains. Then, suddenly, static bursts arrive, sharp, rapid bursts like coded signals. each separated by the smallest silence before another detonates. My pulse refuses to calm. I shuffle my notes from last night and freeze. Across the page, new handwriting sprawls, not mine. Looping, uneven letters, jagged from pressure. Words reading, corridors long. Mirrors opposite. Endless reflections. No exit recorded. The ink is fresh, pen the exact one I left beneath the stack. My stomach turns cold. I don't remember writing these words. I don't even recall waking. What's worse, the description chills me with familiarity. Those corridors, those mirrors, they glint in my mind as almost memories, though none belong to any dream I own. It feels as if I lived them without witnessing, recalling architecture I never walked, rooms I never could escape. The tape didn't simply catch sound. It birthed new residue in my body, left as alien handwriting across my page. I whisper aloud. The act of listening rewrites the memory itself. As soon as words leave my throat, the mic meter flickers alive. Not on playback now, live. The meter twitches though no sound beyond my whisper moves in the room. I hold my breath. The needle lowers, waits. Then when I exhale, it rises again, as though something acknowledges presence through each syllable. The documents scatter across the desk. I pull them close, riffling more pages, desperate for context. Phrases leap out, responses resistant to verification. Behaviors reproducible only in alternate states. The text resists coherence. But the implications from a rough boundary dream exposure was meant to erase lines between lived and implanted. I cannot tell which side of the divide I wake on. I replay the reel again, slower this time. The tone bores into my ribs, steady enough to mimic pulse. Following the 3 hours, the static bursts hammer once more, sharp little fractures spiking past the room's comfort. My eyes blur as I hear faint shapes beneath static, almost syllables, almost language. Each repeat sinks deeper, a hook resisting removal. I press stop, panting. My hand strays back to the new handwriting. Corridors, mirrors, infinite reflections. I test the words aloud, see the mic meter flare brighter. Something recognizes its own echo. The thought makes skin prickle. Dreams leaking into daylight, cataloged by machines I thought loyal. I consider burning the page, erasing the trace, yet instinct whispers no. The tape refuses to stay as inert evidence. It has become participant in my nights, shaping, editing, insisting. Any attempt to destroy feels as naive as asking fire not to burn. That morning stretches longer than it should. I sit in the heavy silence, unsure whether silence belongs to me anymore. The ribbon of tape curls slightly where my fingers pinch too tight, as though even in stillness it shifts, breathes, conspires. I whisper one last note without meaning to. What if dreams aren't private at all? The mic meter jerks upward like an eye-opening. She enters my work quietly, not with the force of sudden partnership, but like someone who has already been listening for some time. Her presence arrives in fragments, emails written late at night, pages she slips across a cafe table without explanation. Classified footnotes pulled from journals that appear ordinary until you notice the buried lines between citations. Numbers that do not belong in open literature. Tables of electromagnetic thresholds, appended in places they should never fit. She tells me over bitter coffee that she used to work inside, contracted for defense labs, tasked with measuring limits of exposure. Thresholds where bodies twitch, break, or turn malleable. Her voice lacks drama. It is calm, analytic, yet something in her steadiness stirs unease in me more than panic ever could. She insists the projects never ended. Closure was paraded for public relief, nothing more. New names rose before the ink had dried on final memos, coded fields tucked in plain sight. Laboratory orders disguised as mundane energy reports. There is no past tense. Everything continues under cover of adjusted labels. I study the way she places each sheet in front of me, the neat rows of her handwriting bordering the margins. "Watch how this pattern repeats," she says, indexing one figure against another. I do. The waves line up, perfect signatures masked among scatter. My stomach knots as I realize the symmetry isn't accident. It is fingerprint. When I ask why me, why now, she shrugs with the exhaustion of someone who has waited too long. "Because you keep listening," she says. "And because you already carry it." The simplicity of her claim chills me worse than the documents themselves. She brings a tool wrapped in cloth, setting it on my desk like an altarpiece. A portable reader, she calls it. Handheld, calibrated to catch spectrum spikes within range too fleeting for consumer devices. It bears the wear of fieldwork, black casing scratched, screen faintly cracked. She teaches me how to align the sensor, how to interpret surges. At once, the abyss of theory closes into the sharp edge of measurement. We agree to test. The night feels sharp with cold when we carry the device to the river. Water smells thick with mud, the bank slippery under boots. She moves with confidence while I stumble, clutching the reader like a relic. Stars stay hidden by low clouds, as if sky itself smothers us. No wind. Air hangs motionless, narrower than breath. She motions for me to power the device. The display wakes in greenish glow. Numbers crawl steady across the surface, listing in quiet pulse. At first, nothing distinguishes itself from background. Crickets scratch faintly beyond the bank. She kneels, scribbling time in her notebook, always meticulous. Then the line spikes. So sudden the screen bleeds upward, numbers jagging into ranges she insists should be unreachable. The river stirs. At first I think it is breeze, but air remains still against my skin. The water alone quakes, shivering rhythmic ripples that pulse against the bank. Stones rattle. My throat tightens. The reader vibrates in my hand, sympathetic with the spikes logged before my eyes. We look at each other, and I read the question in her gaze before she voices it. Proof. Undeniable. Physical proof. Swelling under open air. I crouch lower, ears straining. The sound is subtle but present, like the low growl of a storm building beneath the surface, captured not in the sky but in the water itself. I press the button to capture timestamp entry. For a moment it displays, digits exact, index precise. Then, abruptly, it vanishes. The log resets itself without instruction. I slam the button again. Another registration. Another surge. 2 seconds later, erased. The device strips itself clean while we watch in helpless silence. She curses low, gripping her notes tighter, but never loses poise. Her steadiness steadies me. I push down panic and focus on sensory detail. The way the water ripples, though wind refuses. The way the display refuses memory. The way my own body shakes, though not from cold. "This isn't interference," she says. Her voice cuts deliberate. "It's operation. Someone structured this to be temporary, erased as it occurs." The words slip deep into me like pins. Operation. Structured. This is not random bleed. Not a stray hum twisting its way into machines. This is built. Maintained with intention. The realization rots through me with the heaviness of confirmation. Everything I feared has skeleton and muscle dot. We stand on the muddy bank, the sky thick with silence. I sense the hum more in teeth than ears, subtle vibration rattling bone. She locks her eyes on mine and doesn't look away. "Intrusion isn't accident," she says again. My recorder catches the phrase, though the night swallows other noises. The river finally stills. The device decays back into baseline, readings flat as if nothing occurred. Yet my knees ache from where they pressed against ground, shuddering with each unseen pulse. When I lift the reader, my handprints sweat into scratched casing. She closes her notebook, breath steady even in this ruin of proof. We walk back in silence, steps crunching through gravel faint as whispers. I know the truth now in marrow. The project breathes. And once breathing, it will not sleep. The morning begins with a chill that doesn't belong to the season. I sit down at the desk to open the digital archive I've built out of desperation. Every letter, every line of my father's script scanned, backed up, triplicated across drives. It has become ritual, a way to convince myself his voice, pressed into ink, will not vanish again. But when the folder blinks open, the screen is empty. Files stripped clean. No trace, no fragments in the recycle bin. Logs show nothing removed, nothing rewritten. Emptied without fingerprint, I lunge to the backup drive. The same absence greets me. Panic rises sharp under my ribs. I switch to the secondary cloud copy. Again, nothing. Overnight, 3 separate safeties collapsed into hollow directories. Like someone erased not just the words, but their acknowledgement of existence. Breath-shaking. I pull open the drawer where I keep originals. Pages that once felt heavy with his handwriting now look faint, washed out, the ink thinning as if retreating from the surface. I flip one after another, eyes desperate for familiar phrases. But where loops and slants once pressed thick, now they fade, ghost images almost invisible against the white. My father's letters exhale in reverse, abandoning me line by line. Restless and blurred by panic, I place the mic in front of me. I force myself to recount from memory the phrases I know best, the ones I used to whisper in secret just to hear them ring. His tone, his peculiar rhythm, the way he described silence as thick with someone else's breath. I let the words fall careful, certain my voice can anchor them. The tape spools steady, giving me illusion of control. Hours later, I rewind to check. At first it's my voice nervous, clipped, but then segments fracture. Words I know I spoke break apart, rearrange into odd collages. Phrases cut midstream and reassembled backward, jarring like a bad dream. Instead of "he said silence was thick," I hear myself muttering "thick was said silence he." The cadence is my own, but shifted wrong. Crackles underside each splice. The longer I listen, the less I trust the sound of my own breath. The assistant leans against the desk, reviewing the files with dispassionate eyes. She insists drives can corrupt. Tape can stretch. Alignment falters. She recites technical reasons carefully, like reading from a manual. But every technicality avoids my gaze. When I ask if she has ever seen corruption that rearranges speech into coherent fragments, her silence extends too long. I press her again, voice cracking with fear. She only repeats that errors happen, but her hands grip her notes tighter than calm requires. That tension answers me better than words. Something inside knows this is no random failure. It is substitution. I try speaking again into the microphone, recording only a single phrase. My father's last words were mine to keep. Playback restores it wrong. Last words keep were mine father's. A small permutation, yet obscene in its effect. The system reduces meaning to unstable shuffle. If even my recollection of love can be spliced and resequenced, then nothing is safe. I stare at the faint sheets spread across the table, paler now under the lamp's glow. The idea tears at me. Grief itself is no longer passive memory. It has become terrain to be walked, mined, edited. Every attempt to preserve his words sparks counterforce, rearranging proof into fragments that betray memories shaped. My throat aches as I whisper fragments I fear will vanish, hoping voice alone will cling to air long enough. But already reels stutter, his carrying fragments stripped from sequence. Listening back, I can't tell which phrasing was ever mine. An ache deepens, heavier than absence. Absence would have been clean, tragic, explainable. This is active. His words leaving themselves retroactively, replacing themselves with shuffled variations like evidence that despises being held. The assistant finally speaks softly, low like confession. What can be remembered can be reordered. She doesn't apologize, doesn't explain. She turns away, leaving the sentence to settle like dust. I sit in darkening room. Letters half visible on sheet. My own voice corrupted back through cracked speaker. And I understand what terrifies me most. I am not only losing him. I am losing proximity to truth itself. I thread the receiver through its coil as dusk settles against the windows. The assistant sits across from me, notebook open, fingers tight along the pen. Everything feels precarious, like the house tilts slightly toward some unseen weight. The reels spin steady while I pace my words, narrating test notes into the handheld rig. For a while, nothing extraordinary occurs. Static tumbles as expected, shallow surges on the meter. Then, faintly I hear it, my voice, delayed by a few seconds, echoing back through the speaker dot. At first I assume the loop is feedback. The assistant frowns, leaning closer. But feedback doesn't return altered. This playback does. The words are mine, softened lower, dragged as though weighted by gravel, yet precise enough to sting recognition. I freeze, listening to myself speak from somewhere else. The voice begins to drift from what I actually said. Where I remarked on timecode, the returning echo corrects me, choosing words I never used. Confessed already, it mutters, as though narrating a history I didn't live. My throat tightens. Sweat beads across my neck. The assistant grips the table. Rewind confirms it isn't a stray miss here. The signal deliberately bends, reinvents me. I lean toward the mic, whispering sharp to mark a clean test. Seconds later, the return arrives again, whisper repeating, but altered to, I lied before you. My stomach churns. These aren't scripts I authored. They are being written into me. The assistant lurches forward, yanking the power cord from the wall. Sparks leap as the plug scrapes free. The receiver should drop dead. But the mirrored voice continues. The device isn't on. The reels don't move. Yet the sound persists, riding the air like current, not tethered to power. Her eyes widen, blanching pale. She mouths no, but doesn't speak aloud. The voice continues over our silence, filling the room with phrases warped just beyond my own. It references shame, actions unrecalled, memories not mine. The flood of confession feels invasive, as though an entity has rooted itself inside the timbre of my lungs, generating possibilities in my name. I grab the recorder, now useless in proving anything. The mic needle dances without source, picking up the phantom voice as if it's flesh. My pulse escalates, breath broken. I stumble back, colliding with chair legs, but the voice follows like a tide pulling against recognition. The revelation strikes sharp enough to cut through panic. We aren't intercepting signals at all, we are interception. The channels bend toward us, listening forward through us, pulling sound into mirrors inverted and warped. Ultra didn't collapse. It evolved into this broadcast through mouths like mine, through narrations cast into open air. The project isn't hidden in archive. It breathes live in present tense. The assistant clutches her notebook tight against her chest as if paper might shield her. Her voice cracks raw. Once it hears you, it doesn't stop. She says it like confession, like she's known longer than she dared admit. I want to demand answers, but my throat belongs to the other voice now. The mirrored cadence repeating everything in offset rhythm. We stand in hollow light, powerless before a frequency that refuses plugs and circuits, running instead on something stranger, on acknowledgement itself. Each word I dare speak enters the loop, returns bent lower, proof searing immediate. History no longer requires dusty files. Archives aren't needed. Evidence feeds itself through speech and replay, rewriting present until every listener becomes transmitter. The mirrored version settles into the room, thick as heat. My skin carries the vibration, close and invasive. I can't escape the certainty that this is irreversible. Because once sound crosses into the system, it stays. The road runs empty beneath the towers. Their red lights pulse slow against the low night sky. a skeletal rhythm that feels less like warning and more like invitation. The assistant drives while I balance the receiver open on my knees, antenna rattling faintly with each bump of asphalt. I keep the gain wide, searching, no station marked, just static curling through and outward. Wind presses against the windshield in long sighs. The land here stretches thin, no houses, just forest leaning into black. Static bleeds, surges, slips into a tone that drags my teeth until I wince. I twist the dial, and suddenly it bursts. A bloom floods the spectrum, wide enough to scream across every level. Light erupts visible even on the dashboard, dials flickering bright and dim in strobing sync. The radio meter slams red, needles quivering like struck tuning forks. For a second my eyes blur. The road lines themselves warp, appearing as if the paint liquefies into pale waves. The dashcam mounted above hisses and skips, time stamp rolling erratic before resetting itself. My pen races across. Notebook margins, but the only sound I manage to log is raw hiss. My recorder reels cease briefly before resuming, but they capture fragments indistinguishable from storm noise. Still, it is no storm. The assistant grips the wheel tighter as the tires tremble beneath her. Then phones in nearby pockets chime. Unknowingly, we learn later that witnesses across county lines called emergency services reporting tremors. Houses shaking though no seismic activity was tracked. Her hands steady though her voice hardens as she sets her own equipment active. A modified reader spindles into digitized rhythm, catching what my tape refuses. A block forms across her small screen, a sequence of numeric tones rendered into neat, geometric step. Listening through headphones, it feels less like sound and more like standing inside a lattice. Each number is audible, mapped to frequency with precision that rattles sternum and spine both. She records it all, eyes fixed forward without blinking. Later, in calmer light, we feed the tones through her software. They spell coordinates clear, direct, undeniable. A location tied to government registry, printed without flourish. Cross-reference shows the site abandoned decades ago, structure stripped, staffed nevermore. Records call it decommissioned, left to overgrowth. But the numbers align exact. I trace them with trembling pen across grid, understanding we are no longer stumbling blind. The signal itself chose to point. Still, on the road my body feels heavier each time the bloom repeats. I instruct her to play the tones back through portable speaker. At once my chest tightens. Vibrations crawl deep to bone, a sensation detached from ear, only present in marrow. Instruments on dashboard crackle, lights fading and flaring in rhythm. The engine hiccups once like catching breath. I can't shake how alive the sequence feels, command rather than data, carved to interact with nerves and wires alike. We loop the block continuously, letting tone circle us. I lean into its ache, skin prickling as though current brushes every hair. The assistant finally breaks silence, her voice thick with awe and dread. "It's guiding us," she says. I nod without words. Traveling no longer feels like choice dot in the dim white turbulence of dashboard glow, we decide. Next step is travel. That obeys the coordinates, to follow hum into its chosen ground. The bloom has carved direction into marrow. The signal wants us to arrive. The fence is rusted only on the surface. One shove from the bolt cutters, and it sighs apart, sagging open as if it has been waiting. Wind hisses low through cut grass, but inside the boundary air feels stiller. My boots crunch gravel toward the compound gates. The assistant holds the reader close, her eyes darting between shadows. Night steals edges from buildings until they loom in washed gray dot. We step into the compound. Structures stretch hollow laboratories, administrative shells, small dormitories banked along narrow roads. I expect ruin, graffiti splayed by trespassers, weather chewing through roof lines. Instead, walls remain oddly intact. Paint has peeled only in thin curls, not in slabs. Windows hold their glass. Desks inside stand upright, untouched. It feels preserved, like a set staged yesterday despite records claiming decades of abandonment. She whispers into her recorder, marking initial impressions. I follow suit, though whispering in this place strains differently. Words feel swallowed into dry walls, returning thinner. We pass through double doors leading into a main corridor. Dust hangs faint, but patterns on the floor are sharp enough that it looks cleaned not long ago. My hands sweat inside gloves. I press fingertip against a wall. Cold, almost damp through paint dot. We enter a laboratory that smells faintly of acetone and iron. Broken monitors stare from benches, their glass cracked yet unclouded by dust. Shelves line up neat specimen jars, all empty. A chartboard still bears faint marker, equations trailing off where the writer once stopped. I steady the handheld meter. No power lines feed the room, yet the device surges upward, needle twitching erratically as if gripped by unseen current. The assistant blinks hard, recording values in her notebook while her own device hums at the edge of audible. Then one phrase comes through. Not sound we speak, sound recorded. A faint strand of words overlaying the reel in progress. Clipped clinical language, spoken evenly, without emotion. A voice recites a patient number, dosage, reaction. Another voice follows with second note, overlapping. Soon, others, threads of detached commentary weaving into chorus. I freeze mid-step. The assistant covers her mouth. We glance around empty corners, certain someone must stand near, but nothing moves. Still the chorus continues through equipment. Only faint but insistent, like playback of an archive we never pressed. The sensation of being watched thickens, though our eyes catch no human shape. Air feels occupied. Each phrase breaks off sudden mid-syllable, erased even as it reaches us. Evidence exists only halfway. I whisper time code to anchor the moment. My recorder buzzes once more before sputtering. We step into the stairwell. A pitch hum drifts upward from darkness below, not mechanical but tonal, settling into ribcage more than ear. She grips my arm. We stop here, she insists, voice low, tight with warning. I nod once, but the pull of proof drags me forward. I release her hold and continue. Boots taking slow steps downward into concrete throat. Each step deepens the hum until it rattles orbit of my skull. I hold recorder out before me, but the channel flattens, signal cutting away as though the device has been deafened. From behind me, she pleads muted, but I ignore dot at the halfway landing. The pitch swells into sharp crescendo. I raise recorder to capture, then it cuts dead. Lights still blink power. Reels still turn, but no sound remains. Flat line across every channel. Erasure not of silence, but of presence itself. Panic edges close. I realize hardware cannot shield us here. Whatever vibrates these walls has greater reach than wire or tape. The system strips recording before it exists, collapsing memory as it occurs. My pulse kicks hot. For the first time I know we are no longer only observers. We have entered something alive enough to edit us mid-breath. The stairwell exhales into deeper ground. A cold draft pushing against my throat. Concrete gives way. To dirt smell, metallic hints clinging to my hands as I brush the railing. I keep expecting ruin, but what waits looks too intact. At the corridor's end, thick cables line the walls, bundled tight with tape dried to ash. I press a palm to one. Heat clings faintly beneath its skin. Decades of abandonment don't leave warmth. This is recent. This is alive. The assistant's breath rattles beside me. She doesn't speak, but her eyes search the edges of ceiling for signs of current. The cables stretch further, vanishing down another tunnel. We follow, steps slow, silence porous. Dust floats like snow just above headlamps. Each scrape of shoe feels amplified, every rhythm measured by something unseen. At last the tunnel spills into a chamber. Its walls are padded in deep wedges of soundproofing foam, darkened by time but still swallowing air like open mouths. The assistant studies the floor and crouches low, gloved hands tracing scorch marks across concrete. Circles where equipment once stood. Dark blooms against wall panels. She whispers what I refuse to think. Tone bursts. Attempted collapse. Her words carry gravity. Collapse meaning collapse of memory itself. These marks aren't leftovers of fire. They are residues of sound forced until structures in brain failed. Test sites, left behind like cages after slaughter. I fight against the bile climbing my throat. She sketches fast in notebook margins, notation symbols sharp. I place recorder on a bench and breathe into it, documenting words I pray will survive. Pulse already quickening in chest. Without warning, every device we brought explodes into dissonant feedback. A scream of metal through wire, impossible pressure that hammers eardrum until vision sparks white. I clamp my palms across ears and stumble. The assistant drops to knees, notebook scattering pages. The howl fills chamber until walls themselves throb. Then as sudden as arrival, it slices away into emptiness that our devices click mute. Every light stubbornly green, reels spinning, yet no sound remains. Meters fall flat, readings gone. Too quiet, realm quiet. My heart slams loud enough to fill the gap. I reach trembling hand, stopping recorder. Later, while reviewing, only 10 seconds offer sound. Just our breath accelerating, the scrape of shifting boots, then blank. Not hollow hiss, not room tone. Blankness like air was crushed flat. Then the interruption arrives. Voices weave across the void. Not ours. Even cadence, inhumanly calm. A list. Words I recognize only as project IDs, rattled down like census. Each number etched too clean, unbroken by lungs or stumble. Hearing it back makes my skin crawl with nausea. As though the chamber itself used our silence to speak in its own tongue. We flee, stumbling towards stairwell while dust chokes throat and eyes water without smoke. Every footstep feels weighted like chains, but urgency drives us out. At the landing. I risk one glance behind. The corridor still glows with faint standby gleam from abandoned panels. An afterimage of warm cable fades in memory. My chest seizes at the thought. This isn't historic debris. It isn't artifact. It is operation continuing, tests still pulsing, circuits still warm. Claw in daylight feels like reprieve, but breath won't calm. My legs shake, palms sting raw from stone. I whisper to myself, raw confession. We didn't uncover remnants. We stepped into an ongoing trial. And the moment we entered, we became subjects, roles assigned without consent. The room feels smaller than I left it. Papers spread across the desk bow under the weight of dust. Monitors still flickering faint blue even before I power them. I sit back down, hands shaking above the keyboard, and scroll through the radio logs from the last 48 hours. Channels I've long marked dead, unused, forgotten, locked and static, are no longer blank. Each carries a thread of faint ticking, regular and sharp, like the second hand on a clock. I lean closer with headphones pressed to skull until my ears ache. The ticking continues steady, but with undertone too light to dismiss. I pull up another device, sync it, and then another. The pattern repeats across all, static, tick, tick, tick. At first random, but then my chest tightens. The rhythm mirrors my own heartbeat, each pulse delayed by a fraction, but returning exact, echoing as if body and broadcast share one rhythm. I hold my breath to stop it. The ticks falter a moment later, then restart aligned. The assistant sees the readouts, her face hard as she backs away. "Turn it off," she says, voice sharper than I've heard from her yet. She stands arms folded as though trying to shield herself from sound. Cut it before it threads itself deeper. But my hands resist. Compulsion sets down roots the more I hear. Documentation feels not just choice, but requirement, as though if I don't preserve it, detail will vanish into erasure like every letter before. I argue without raising voice. Proof demands capture. She whispers again, pleading sharper, but my notebook is already open, pen striking columns with failing neatness. I jot pulses into rows, counting them, marking seconds. Slowly, a map takes form. The ticks aren't plain cycles they code. Every cycle clusters, and once transcribed, dates emerge from inside. Numbers line up clear. My pen stalls when those same numbers match calendar history. Dates connected to vanishings, headlines long tucked away. They walk steadily toward one point, the day my father disappeared. My throat closes until I can hardly breathe. I flip to fresh sheet, log forward sets of ticks. These align not with past, but with days still ahead. Future mapped, small absences forecast like timetables. The assistant murmurs that I don't understand what I'm feeding. She reaches for the switch, but I knock her hand gently aside. I mutter that projecting past aligned with recorded present could mean engineered outcomes. It isn't prediction, but orchestration. At the core, it is a calendar of loss built into static. Each silence targeted. My chest thunders loud, sweat running into my eyes. The ticks copy, echo, reflect. I feel them grazing bone as though my body itself is antenna. My notes blur as pen digs deeper, almost carving paper. Here, silence is not passive. Silence shuts with teeth, seething like predator circling perimeter of sound. She presses again, near tears, saying it is killing me to continue. But I can't stop. Once the pattern has shown itself, withdrawal is impossible. Every new play of static confirms more. I trigger playback obsessively, cycle after cycle. The clicks cut like small hammers into skull, coding rhythm both inevitable and intimate. The realization lands slow but crushing. What vanished in records isn't error. It was by design. What disappears isn't lost but scheduled. Disappearances calibrated like tones in lab rooms, like test subjects folded into silence. Voices locked out of continuity and dates predetermined. I whisper one date aloud. The meter spikes, needle trembling. My breath drops shallow as the ticks quicken faintly in reply. It is not archive anymore. It's alive. Each moment I press play, it listens back, confirming through rhythm that what happened to my father was never incidental. It was prepared, engineered, and the silence that followed wasn't absence. It was fulfillment. I should turn it off. I tell myself this, throat raw, but my finger finds play again before thought can resist. The storm begins as a slow drum on the roof, then splits open into full percussion. Wind lashes the streets until the windows thrum and gutters choke. By the time we run extension cords across the floor, whole city blocks blink to black. The neighborhood plunges into darkness broken only by the intermittent flare of dying street lamps. I watch the outlines of towers vanish into rain cloud, feel air pressure not inside my ears. Recorders sip battery power, reels spinning against the silence in the building. No station, no antenna feed, but still they catch. The first low hum slides into hearing, subtle as fog. Not weather. Something louder than rain, heavier than thunder, spreading across every channel simultaneously. The assistant shifts uneasily, hand hovering over the stop switch. Instinct can't bear to press. I step toward the window pane, eyes straining through sheets of water. The streets below glisten not only with floodwater, but with movement. Reflections shimmer shapes too intentional to be natural. Antenna shadows crawl across the surface, flickering like limbs stretched from static itself. Each flash bends into angles of bodies without bone, sketched in pulse and tremor. Phones erupt in the distance, neighbors calling lines in panic. Through thin walls their words trail through air, phantom broadcasts making them dizzy. Voices that throw vertigo into ear canals, sound collapsing like pressure sickness. None of them hear steady rain alone. All feel density thickening, layered signals pushing inside skull. We run between circuits in the safe house, pulling wires, changing reels, swapping devices, but everything collapses under the raw influx. Every channel is layered to burst-in, coded sequences bleeding until playback buckles into noise. Thunder cracks sharp, but even thunder feels drowned out by the saturation of it. My throat dries with dread. The whole block hums like one resonant instrument. The assistant shouts coordinates, scribbling uselessly as lines double and triple themselves, mid-note. I pace, incapable of stillness while the world tilts. It feels as if our entire shelter is nested in a chamber, glass walls invisible but resonant. The hum thickens until my chest vibrates against breath. Instruments pinned red, needles helpless, the raw air one sustained chord. Outside, the water climbs steps, dark sheen rippling while static shapes twist across its mirror. I can't tell which belong to towers and which to signals expanded into body. Every sense insists this is beyond interception. It is environment now, a field swallowing the city in gradients of pressure and tone. At midnight, it stops, everything. Rain still falls, lightning still sketches across cloud banks, but sound evacuates. Not silence as in quiet silence, as in soaked fabric over mouth. A collapse of tone into sudden absence so dense it steals presence out of breath itself. I steady myself on the recorder, heart hammering in the void. She squeezes my shoulder hard. Her whisper cuts close enough for warmth to brush my skin. It isn't research anymore. It's deployment. The words shudder deep in bone. The experiment has expanded its perimeter until experiment no longer applies. We're standing inside operation. Evidence doesn't sit in files or tapes now. It inhabits air, soaks environment like floodwater, layering into daily weather without permission. Her eyes search mine, carrying the terror I can't voice. I look beyond her shoulder to the blank machines, reels spinning but capturing nothing, as if their service has been outgrown. Everything has escalated beyond us, beyond narrative. An experiment vaster than any single mind can chart pours down, and we are inside, already soaked through. The blackout has bled into morning, yet even with power restored the air feels wrong. Devices hum faintly when they should sleep. I place my palm over a radio still switched off. Warmth hums through casing. An unplugged recorder ticks softly like a heart under floorboards. I log everything with pen strokes jagged from lack of rest. The data shows faint undercurrents, microwaves repeating the same tone bands across multiple machines. Unconnected, unsensed, yet identical. The assistant refuses to look at the logs. She just says, voice flat, that the lines are gone. No barrier remains between subject and transmitter. We are carriers now, not just listening, but relaying without choice. I argue breathless that I can still contain it with tape, still mark evidence, but as I talk my own signal betrays me. Listeners send word back saying they can hear my nerves layered beneath narration. Not in words, but in what leaks around them. One describes phantom phone calls. No voice greeting them, only the sound of background. Furniture moving, chairs scraped on linoleum, papers shuffled in rooms they don't remember visiting. Fragments pulled like bleed from a channel once considered private. I don't reply. I can't, because when I replay my latest tape, even I hear spaces rearranged. Interior swell shaped from sounds I never made. I hear faint clatter of keys, distant coughs, layers added like memories from borrowed throats. I begin to wonder if listening back now fabricates as much as it confirms. Nights I can't stay inside. I walk city blocks instead, antenna in one hand, frequency reader in the other. Lights of shop fronts pulse soft, shadows of lampposts bend like arms. Yet no matter where I raise receiver, tones follow. Not increased here, diminished there. Just constant trail that overlays my own breathing pace. The sense is not that I track it, but that it moves with me. Tethered. Proof, no longer freeze. It locks. Each record binds me deeper to system, funneling not into clarity but obligation. If I narrate, it grows. If I stop, silence pulses emptier, demanding return. My notes pile until paper feels acidic in hand. Each word pulled from mouth feels less like description, more like repetition of pattern, unconscious, contagious. I sit staring at the microphone. I think of what the assistant said bluntly, without lifting eyes. Your words are transmitters now. It settles inside me heavier than burial. Notes meant as anchors become repeaters. Testimony functions as lattice. Each recount loops tone into fresh circuit. When I whisper this realization, the mic meter dances. Playback carries faint hum ghosting underneath my syllables, nested, indelible. I unchain. My grief is no longer preserved as account. It multiplies into the field by simply being told, and the words keep spreading. She pulls back her sleeve at dawn, hand trembling though her eyes stay hard. Across her forearm faint red lines, ETCH beneath the skin. Not scratches, not rash, patterns, wavelengths, jagged like graphs from oscilloscope printouts. I lean closer, breath caught. She points to one section in particular. Look at the crest, she whispers. It matches last night's spike. The similarity is exact. Her body records transmission now, skin is log. Exposure has left burn-in dot. Her face holds fear, but also resignation. We're too deep to escape, she says, voice flat yet steady. She isn't speaking in metaphor. Signal prints itself physically now, carried beyond tape. As she lowers her sleeve, I fight the urge to check my own arms. Pale in morning light, we decide to test containment. Using heavy canvas shielding, we wrap one recorder tight, burying it in layers of cloth, placing it inside a metal trunk. If tones bleed only through air, maybe this barrier will hush them. We set the machine running and wait in tense silence. Playback confirms failure. The tones seep through anyway, clear but warped, buzzing like they threaded directly through fabric of metal. Containment is futile. Whoever built these transmissions, or whatever lies behind them, crafted protocols meant to bypass gear. No shield is wall enough. Cataloging continues because neither of us can stop. She charts pattern changes across her skin, measuring new rises of tracking fever. I scribble frantic notes while reels clatter. Yet in fatigue I feel shifts beyond waking. My dreams no longer drift natural. They lurch, accelerate, fire rapid images too sharp to belong to me. I close eyes and see my father's hand turning pages I never touched. His boots in corridors I never entered. Flashes of him signing documents I cannot recall but feel embedded like old memories installed inside skull. They arrive not like dream logic but more like upload. Direct, clean, invasive. Worse when I scratch notes after these nights. The handwriting blurs. Lines begin in my style but taper into hers. Letters morphing halfway through without pause. She points it out gently, worried but resolved. Our notebooks weave together, even when only one of us holds the pen. Narratives are fusing, distinctions stolen. My life merges into inherited channels. I narrate into recorder with dry mouth, voice cracking under weight. I say plainly that playback will warp, but I must speak regardless. Silence is no safer. Later review proves it true. My words unravel into delays, foreign timbres, echoes of tones. No clean line survives the system anymore. Every account is infected with further broadcast. I clear throat and continue, admitting what dread has settled in marrow. The signal is no longer external. It prints itself on flesh, stamps itself in handwriting, loads itself into dreams. It lives inside both of us now, running protocol as if human biology is newest device. I whisper final line into microphone. My voice shakes but doesn't falter. It's in us, and it isn't finished. Outside, the water climbs steps, dark sheen rippling while static shapes twist across its mirror. I can't tell which belong to towers and which to signals expanded into body. Every sense insists this is beyond interception. It is environment now. A field swallowing the city in gradients of pressure and tone. At midnight, it stops. Everything. Rain still falls. Lightning still sketches across cloud banks, but sound evacuates. Not silence as in quiet silence, as in soaked fabric over mouth. A collapse of tone into sudden absence so dense, it steals presence out of breath itself. I steady myself on the recorder, heart hammering in the void. She squeezes my shoulder hard. Her whisper cuts close enough for warmth to brush my skin. It isn't research anymore. It's deployment. The words shudder deep in bone. The experiment has expanded its perimeter until experiment no longer applies. We're standing inside operation. Evidence doesn't sit in files or tapes now. It inhabits air, soaks environment like floodwater, layering into daily weather without permission. Her eyes search mine, carrying the terror I can't voice. I look beyond her shoulder to the blank machines, reels spinning but capturing nothing. As if their service has been outgrown. Everything has escalated beyond us, beyond narrative. An experiment vaster than any single mind can chart pours down, and we are inside, already soaked through. The blackout has bled into morning, yet even with power restored the air feels wrong. Devices hum faintly when they should sleep. I place my palm over a radio still switched off. Warmth hums through casing. An unplugged recorder ticks softly like a heart under floorboards. I log everything with pen strokes jagged from lack of rest. The data shows faint undercurrents, microwaves repeating the same tone bands across multiple machines. Unconnected, unsensed, yet identical. The assistant refuses to look at the logs. She just says, voice flat, that the lines are gone. No barrier remains between subject and transmitter. We are carriers now. Not just listening, but relaying without choice. I argue breathless that I can still contain it with tape, still mark evidence, but as I talk my own signal betrays me. Listeners send word back saying they can hear my nerves layered beneath narration. Not in words, but in what leaks around them. One describes phantom phone calls. No voice greeting them, only the sound of background. Furniture moving, chairs scraped on linoleum, papers shuffled in rooms they don't remember visiting. Fragments pulled like bleed from a channel once considered private. I don't reply. I can't, because when I replay my latest tape, even I hear spaces rearranged. Interior swell shaped from sounds I never made. I hear faint clatter of keys, distant coughs, layers added like memories from borrowed throats. I begin to wonder if listening back now fabricates as much as it confirms. Nights I can't stay inside. I walk city blocks instead, antenna in one hand, frequency reader in the other. Lights of shop fronts pulse soft. Shadows of lampposts bend like arms. Yet no matter where I raise receiver, tones follow. Not increased here, diminished there. Just constant trail that overlays my own breathing pace. The sense is not that I track it, but that it moves with me, tethered. Proof no longer freeze. It locks. Each record binds me deeper to system, funneling not into clarity, but obligation. If I narrate, it grows. If I stop, silence pulses emptier, demanding return. My notes pile until paper feels acidic in hand. Each word pulled from mouth feels less like description, more like repetition of pattern, unconscious, contagious. I sit staring at the microphone. I think of what the assistant said bluntly, without lifting eyes. Your words are transmitters now. It settles inside me heavier than burial. Notes met as anchors become repeaters. Testimony functions as lattice. Each recount loops tone into fresh circuit. When I whisper this realization, the mic meter dances. Playback carries faint hum ghosting underneath my syllables, nested, indelible. I am chain. My grief is no longer preserved as account. It multiplies into the field by simply being told, and the words keep spreading. She pulls back her sleeve at dawn. hand trembling though her eyes stay hard. Across her forearm faint red lines ETCH beneath the skin. Not scratches, not rash, patterns, wavelengths, jagged like graphs from oscilloscope printouts. I lean closer, breath caught. She points to one section in particular. "Look at the crest," she whispers. "It matches last night's spike. The similarity is exact. Her body records transmission now, skin is log. Exposure has left burn-in dot. Her face holds fear, but also resignation. We're too deep to escape," she says, voice flat yet steady. She isn't speaking in metaphor. Signal prints itself physically now, carried beyond tape. As she lowers her sleeve, I fight the urge to check my own arms. Pale in morning light, we decide to test containment. Using heavy canvas shielding, we wrap one recorder tight, burying it in layers of cloth, placing it inside a metal trunk. If tones bleed only through air, maybe this barrier will hush them. We set the machine running and wait in tense silence. Playback confirms failure. The tones seep through anyway, clear but warped, buzzing like they threaded directly through fabric of metal. Containment is futile. Whoever built these transmissions, or whatever lives behind them, crafted protocols meant to bypass gear. No shield is wall enough. Cataloging continues because neither of us can stop. She charts pattern changes across her skin, measuring new rises as if tracking fever. I scribble frantic notes while reels clatter. Yet in fatigue I feel shifts beyond waking. My dreams no longer drift natural. They lurch, accelerate, fire rapid images too sharp to belong to me. I close eyes and see my father's hand turning pages I never touched. His boots in corridors I never entered. Flashes of him signing documents I cannot recall but feel embedded like old memories installed inside skull. They arrive not like dream logic but more like upload. Direct, clean, invasive. Worse when I scratch notes after these nights. The handwriting blurs. Lines begin in my style but taper into hers. Letters morphing halfway through without pause. She points it out gently, worried but resolved. Our notebooks weave together, even when only one of us holds the pen. Narratives are fusing, distinction stolen. My life merges into inherited channels. I narrate into recorder with dry mouth, voice cracking under weight. I say plainly that playback will warp, but I must speak regardless. Silence is no safer. Later review proves it true. My words unravel into delays, foreign timbres, echoes of tones. No clean line survives the system anymore. Every account is infected with further broadcast. I clear throat and continue, admitting what dread has settled in marrow. The signal is no longer external. It prints itself on flesh, stamps itself in handwriting, loads itself into dreams. It lives inside both of us now, running protocol as if human biology's newest device. I whisper final line into microphone. My voice shakes but doesn't falter. It's in us, and it isn't finished. I tell them aloud that evidence was never going to remain in declassified files, in paper stacks damp with age. Evidence is here. It is transmitted through us. It latches our voices, our repetition, carried endlessly each time we speak it, each time we think it. Broadcast never contained, just diffused body to body like sparks across wire. The assistant sits behind me, silent. Her recorder blinks, red light steady though she never touched it. The silence of her body feels heavier than language. The machine insists anyway, spinning in rhythm with mine, layering yet another unchecked track. When I glance back, she meets my eyes with something more like surrender than fear. She doesn't stop the light. She doesn't move to resist. She simply lets it pulse. The drizzle thickens, aligns with memory. Cadence matches opening night. I close my eyes and I can't tell whether it's still raining or simply replayed from months ago. The black screen of my monitor throws no image. Yet staring at it, I feel seen. The void carries weight as if some attention pushes through, quiet, patient, unblinking. I speak clear, one final note. Once you hear it, you carry it. My voice sounds stripped and thin, but the words outlive my tones. Playback will alter the cadence, adjust the inflection, but the construct will remain. Silence is no longer shelter. Silence shifts as soon as you enter it. Rain itself carries traces, water bending to unfamiliar hums. The screen looks empty, but fullness waits beyond. The system was never in one place. It doesn't end in tapes or terminals or scorched compounds. It lingers inside attention, inside repetition, inside the way stories bed down under skin until told again. The night caves into drizzle, soft, relentless. Each drop beats its mark against glass like faint code. And the system does not end here.